I guess it was about a month ago that I had you on the hot seat on my show, so I can't wait to release that episode. But as far as who I am, I'm still trying to figure that out, but still trying to grow up. I'm only 57, so I still have a little time. But yeah, so I think people sort of know me as like a sobriety expert. I am agnostic as in terms of tools on how to get that done. But I've been sober for 32 years. I met my husband when I was, thank you. I met my husband when I was 5 months sober, and so far, so good. We're still married. We have two adult boys that are just very, we were wondering how this happened. They're very like high morals. They're good kids. It's like maybe growing up in a sober household, we were preaching the values and things like that, and maybe demonstrating, the ability to say I love you and I'm sorry in the same day,
Mm,
that kind of thing.
mm.
Practice a little self-examination. But yeah, so I wrote a book called The 12-Step Guide for Skeptics. It's clearing up common misconceptions of a path to sobriety, but don't let that scare you because I am not dogmatic about it. It's just like, hey, in case you're curious, there's a thing, a process that might be helpful. If not, that's okay too. There's like the same tools exist in many places, so we can talk about that. And I'm just really an advocate for helping people to heal. That's like my mission in life. It's like, because I was one of those who almost didn't survive, but here we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think I shared with you before, like, I give credit to the 12-step program. It was definitely there for me in the beginning. Life just took me in a direction that had me explore, how to make it work, right? How to make it work. And it was different than maybe what had been written. So let's go back, right? You said right there, may not have survived, right? So I would love share with our listeners because I think and I really think every single story of addiction, the only thing that is in common is the pain and the suffering, right? I think that's really the only thing. So what did that story, what were the details of that story that found you in the pain and suffering that addiction brings?
Yeah, my pain and suffering sort of was rooted in this idea of my self-identity. When I was growing up, I had really nice parents. They didn't drink or use or anything like that. They're very middle class America. Daddy worked for the government. He's from Kentucky. My mother was from Mexico City. She was an amazing person, but when I was growing up, she didn't have a lot of coping skills, so I didn't get any from her, from either one of them, really. But so a couple of things happened to me when I was really young. One was I was abused, sexually abused by a neighbor,
Mm,
and the other thing was is that my parents divorced when I was 7. And I actually grew up in a Christian church and had these ideas of perfectionism. I didn't really understand that that's what I was receiving. I'm not sure that that's what was being taught, but that's what I was receiving. And, ideal, it's funny because there's all these ideals that certain organizations teach. And ideals are funny because they're a mental construct. It's like the horizon is a mental construct. You can always walk towards it, but you can never actually arrive. And so I sort of missed that message that it was this idea of the journey, right? It wasn't
mm,
actually about arriving, it was about the journey. So anyway, I missed all that. So, going back to my identity piece, it was very much shaped by these young experiences, and the end result was that I had very low self esteem.
mm,
Like my self identity was very skewed towards there's something wrong with me, I'm broken, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. That was all root. So when you operate from that place, then you try to overcompensate. And my way of overcompensating was through achievement and trying to entertain people and trying to earn love, right? And so that sort of served me well in some ways. In my adult life, I always had like three jobs, and like no matter how bad my addiction got, I was always employed. I was like two or three. I was a busy girl, you know. I was kind of a high functioning type of person. On the flip side, that when you talk about like the dark stuff, it's like I was blacking out. I was
Mm.
drunk driving. I was promiscuous. I put myself in danger a lot. I was ruining all my relationships. I experienced alcohol poisoning many times. Not to the, you know, you hear about these kids that get really drunk and they get their stomach pumped and whatever like that. And I never was like hospitalized. I was just like on the brink of death many times. So when I say like for me, and I didn't drink every day, but when I drank, it was to oblivion usually. And when I say near death, I very easily could have, you know, killed myself or been, you know, harmed by others. So for me coming to the conclusion that I needed to practice abstinence, it was a process, but that was the final conclusion for me that I came to. It's just, I am just not that type of person who can control their drinking or manage it.
You know, it's running through my head, and I think I like, you know, you said I wasn't an everyday drinker, and I think this is something that a lot of people want to equate to being the problem,
Mm.
right? They want to say, well, I'm not an everyday drinker, or, well, I only drink maybe, you know, two or three times a month. Um, but you just said like drank to oblivion, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, could you, especially you've got a number of years to look back and to have reflected upon that. Like, what was that really like? Like, going through this realization of realizing it didn't need to be the everyday. It was truly what it was doing to you in those moments, or let's be real, the days after realizing the moments.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal. You know, I would have those mornings where I'd wake up and just be like, what was that all about? Like, when I would drink, I would have these two predominant personalities that would emerge. It was either Wimpy Wendy or Badass Betsy because I was either fighting or crying. And then much later, I was like, you know what? There was a third personality, Slutty Susan. And she showed up all the time, and everybody loved her, like
Oh
almost
my.
literally. You know, but there was those mornings when I would wake up and I would, after the Badass Betsy came out, you know, because I would be arguing with people, and it was almost as if everything that I was shoving down, all my feelings, frustrations, resentments, I had a very strong victim mentality. Like, why is everybody being so mean to me? All that was just being shoved down. And when I drank, it all exploded.
Hmm.
And I could not predict which personality was going to come out. Sometimes all three would show up. You know, I was either fighting or crying. Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, but I didn't understand that it was rooted. What was compelling me to drink was emotion management, like an inability to do that. But it was also the underlying trauma.
Yeah.
Like underlying trauma was, I was completely dissociated from it, so I didn't realize I had it, number one. And it was buried so deep, but it's still there. Like if you experience trauma, it's like a barrel of toxic waste that's buried in your psyche, but it still leaks out and it ruins everything around it. And that's what it was like for me. These limiting beliefs, these like of not good enough, not worthy,
Mm.
broken, it was showing up everywhere. And so I would go through these cycles of, you know, feeling the need to drink but not understanding why, and then exploding when I drank, and then suffering the consequences of my behavior afterwards. It was
Yeah.
brutal.
Um, yeah, I had an ex that said that there were two. There was Drunk Jen would show up, which was the fun party one, and then Smashly, which was the absolutely unpredictable, you had no clue what was going to happen, yeah, at
Yeah,
that particular point. So yeah, no, I agree.
I relate
You
to that.
know, you'd kind of mentioned in there a little bit that like there was some effort, right? You were making this realization, and I don't think you used the word kind of like trying to moderate or manage the
Oh,
addiction.
definitely.
But like what did that look like? Cuz I know I like no joke. I used to keep this online journal, and I, for some odd reason, this was like maybe within the last couple of months, went back through it trying to find a picture on it. And I found a post, a journal entry when I was, I think, like 22. And I literally used the words trying to manage my healthy addictions. I know. And I was like, oh God, wow, right? So I know for a fact that was like another shocker for me that I had been trying to moderate for probably almost 20 years.
Wow. Oh, that's exhausting.
Mm-hmm. So what did that like moderation or management look like for you?
So I started moderating. So let's see, I had a really bad night with my because I thought of myself as the party girl. That was my identity, right? A lot of recovery is about identity shaping, identity shifting, but my identity at the time was party girl. And then at 23 years old, I was out with my sister. I was like burning through all my friendships or all my relationships. I had a hard time keeping friends because I was an asshole. um, but so anyway, I was out with my sister one night, and that was what I would consider to be like one of my bottoms. Like the police were involved. I physically assaulted my sister. I put myself in danger. I lost my ever loving mind that night, and woke up the next day feeling like that sinking, sickening feeling that something terrible happened the night before. And that's when I really started questioning my drinking. And that's when I started moderating. That's when I was like, okay, we need a glass of water between every drink. Let's leave a
Mm,
glass of water and some aspirin by the bed before we go to sleep. Let's switch from hard alcohol to just beer and wine. Let's eat before we go out. Do you know what I mean? It just was
mm,
like on and on and on trying to moderate my drinking. But as they say in some traditional literature, is you can enjoy and control your drinking at the same time. And that was true for me. That was true for me. And I sort of have this philosophy of like a stoplight theory of addiction. It's like there are some people who can drink moderately and their lives are fine. Like there are some people who can just use alcohol and be normal, right? No consequences. But then there's the yellow light people where you're starting to experience some consequences. You're having one too many fights, you're waking up in the middle of the night with anxiety, you're starting to experience some consequences. And this is when some tools, meditation, journaling, exercise like that can start to help you bring it back down to the green light. But then there are those of us who go up to the red light, which is where I was at. Sort of once you hit a red light experience, there's really no going back to green. There really isn't. And what I'm talking about in red light is physical addiction, the kind where if you need to stop, you need to go to detox so that you don't have a seizure, that you get a DUI, do you know what I mean? Like there's some very severe consequences in that red light. And once you've ever crossed a red light, there's no going back to green. But I didn't know that. I was
mm,
really trying to go back to green. So for 2 years, I tried to moderate
mm.
my drinking until finally I came to the conclusion. It was after my 25th birthday. Went out, had an episode. I would call these evenings episodes. Like I didn't have an episode every time I drank, but every time I had an episode, I'd been drinking, you know. And I had this boyfriend who I thought was my ideal, and I was losing him to my drinking, and it was just a mess. And yeah, I woke up and I was like, I'm never gonna. After my 25th birthday, I woke up and I was like, I'm never gonna drink again, and I haven't. I smoked weed for 5 more months, but I didn't know. And then I did seek help through 12 step, but that's how I got sober.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not joking. Almost 20 years. Almost
That's
20 years
brutal.
that and I look back now and all of the things that you're saying are all of the conversations, right? And I'd love to say, I'll tell you this. I think the reason why it didn't get to the point that it got when I hit my rock bottom is because I'm not only an alcoholic, I'm also a workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that I didn't have time. I didn't have all the time to drink,
Mm.
right? And so, like I wasn't drinking until midnight when I had to be up at 5 o'clock to be to work at 6:30, right? So here I managed a lot of my non-drinking time through keeping busy,
Yeah.
right? Um, and if I hadn't have had that level of ethics, like work ethics, so to speak, um, probably would have found myself in the darkness that I ended up in a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of suffering throughout those years. There was a lot of like what you're describing of the fights and the arguments and the waking up the next day and going like, oh my God, right? Remembering what I did and wishing I didn't.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, remembering what I did many of the times and wishing that I didn't. So here you are, 25. I'm curious, have you looked at or recognized like what was the difference between that 23-year-old that tried to moderate and the 25-year-old that said I'm never drinking again?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. Can you repeat that?
The difference between the 23-year-old that said I'm
Uh,
going to moderate and the 25-year-old that said I'm never picking up a drink again. Can you see what the difference or like how that was how that change happened?
yeah. So it didn't even occur to me at 23 that I could quit or that it would be worth
Mm.
it or that I should and I still had some ideas about how to manage this thing. And I really had to shoot every angle and exhaust every possibility that I could come up with. And along that 2 year journey, I met people who were sharing their stories about how they used to be like me, but then they went through this process and they no longer, not only did they no longer feel the need to drink and use the way I was doing it, but their lives were like exponentially better and they were
Mm.
happier and their lives were beautiful. And I was like, what? That's so it. And I think this is going to sound totally crazy, but I saw one of those midnight Tony Robbins commercials and bought a cassette series in the mail. And it was interesting. The takeaway was that if you change your mind, you could change your life. That
Mm.
it was that I had these beliefs, these limiting beliefs about me not being good enough or broken that were actually contributing to my choices and my life experiences. That I was sort of living in the residual of all my choices from yesterday. Right. And so these trippy ideas. And then I was meeting these people who were like, yeah, if you don't take the first drink, you can't get drunk. Or, they're, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That was actually very profound. It sounds obvious now, but they were like, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. You have to change your actions. It's like the law of cause and effect, right? If you want a different effect, you have to make different choices. And so these were all like mind blowing concepts to me. Other also like in every resentment, in every relationship, there's like a 50-50 shared responsibility. And, I thought it was either my fault or their fault,
Mm.
and so it was very difficult for me to look at my part because I always felt so guilty. But that idea actually came from a book called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. That was mind blowing to me. It was this idea of personal responsibility. And I didn't know that I was stuck in this perpetual victimhood because I wasn't accepting responsibility for my own feelings. So all these ideas are kind of coming at me in those 2 years of trying to moderate. I was living in the self-help section at Barnes and Noble trying to figure out, and I thought I was confused about what the actual problem was. I thought if I could find the right man and make enough money, my life would be perfect. So I was reading like the 7 spiritual laws of success and and men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Like, and back then in 90, let's see, I got sober in 94. So in like 92, there were no recovery memoirs. That wasn't
Yeah,
even a
no.
thing. There was like no, there was like traditional AA literature, and then it was like psychology solving all these other problems. There really wasn't anything else. So
Even if there was, it was probably buried under some other topic, right? Like
yeah,
even
like
if
the
there
Trojan
was,
horse type of, yeah.
yeah, they probably talked about it in some other way and didn't lead with the addiction, but led with whether it was the trauma or the something else.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and research what was available at 92, but I was seeking, but I was not finding not until
Well,
I not until I got to 12 step and started reading that literature, and that was kind of what made the difference for me.
yeah. So you wake up and you make that decision when you're 25 that you're not going to, like, what did that first year look like? Because you said like smoked pot still for 4 months or 5 months.
Yeah.
Um, you found 12 step. Like, so what did that whole first year? Because I know I like even right now within our coven, we have a number of folks that are still in their double digits, right? And trying to help somebody understand that what that first year experience is like is sometimes good luck, right? Because it's hard. It's a
Yeah.
much different way of life. So what did your first year in recovery look like for you?
So mine was I moved back in with my mom and my sister, and I really focused on recovery. And there were meetings available to me. I wasn't working a whole lot, and so I was at meetings a lot, like 12 step meetings. I went to AA. I did meetings. I was going to many meetings. I found somebody who was very kind and was able to explain the concepts to me because it was very kind of confronting on things that they were talking about God. I was like, oh no, if that's what this is, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I met this gal who was like, "Oh no, that's not even a thing. Don't even worry about it." I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, who gets to decide what that means to you? Like, what does the word actually mean? Like, we get to assign meaning to these words." And I was like, I don't get it. So she had me take like a piece of binder paper like this, and on one side she said, "Let's just for funsies, write down all the qualities you would want this quote God on God to be." I was like, all right, whatever. So like loving, all powerful, I'm the favorite, just like all, whatever. It's like God is love, just like this is what I would want it to be. And on the other side, she was like, okay, what do you not want it to be? And I was like, well, condemning, punishing, judgmental, this idea of the fiery pits of hell never made sense to me. Right. Like, anyway, so that was on that side. And then when I was done, she's like, okay, let me see your piece of paper. So I handed her my treasured, precious little lists, and she tore it in half. And she gave me the good side. And she like crumpled up the bad side, threw it away. She's like, we're just gonna do work with this. And I was like, that's it. She's like, that's it. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So that's where we started with this idea of spirituality as opposed to religion. What I was
Mm.
doing was like, because I grew up with religion, but me and God broke up a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, I'm not getting back together with God. But she's like, oh, well, here's just another way of looking at it. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay. And so that was my repeated experience through these steps was this process of, oh, it's not what I thought it was. Right. I didn't realize like at face value. I remember one of the guys I was working with, when I was in sales, and all of my clients, it was for shipping and receiving company, so all my clients were dudes. I remember this one dude, Mitch, was sober, and I was sitting in his office one day, and he'd been talking to me about the program basically, and one day he slid this blue piece of paper across the desk, and it was the steps. Maybe it was yellow. I don't remember now. And I read it and I was like, okay. Like it fell flat for me. I was like, I don't get it. And so the process of, understanding concepts was revelatory for me. And so I just needed an interpreter. I needed a guide to interpret what it actually, like at face value it says this, but here's the in practice and in action, this is what it really means. This is how
Mm.
you apply it. And it was largely a writing exercise. So that first year was a process of being willing to stay open minded and confront my triggers. They say under every trigger is a treasure, and I have found that to be true. And there was a lot of people in those rooms that were like at meetings that were very triggering. I didn't know in the beginning that meetings and the program are two separate things. The steps are the program, not the people. And the people can be really offensive. I'll just say the people, it is not the hotbed of mental health, right? So there's
Yeah.
some guardrails are required. I explain all this in my book about what the guardrails are and how to proceed with caution, type of thing. Not everyone is to be trusted, type of thing, which is very tempting because you show up and you're like, my life is a mess. Just tell me what to do. That's kind of how I was like, just tell me what to do. So I was in that sort of student mindset that first year. But that first year was crazy. I mean, I met my husband, 5 months after I got totally off everything. And I went through the steps. I, I, I changed dramatically. I was able to quit everything. And by the time I got a 1 year chip, man, I not a whole lot was different on the outside. Although I had a loving person in my life. I finally was able to move out and get an apartment. I had stable employment, very humble, stable employment. But I had a group of friends. I had a community. I had a spiritual practice that made sense to me. It had to make sense to me. And this concept of a higher power, I just call it God because, you say God, everyone's kind of on board. They know what you're talking about, kind of.
Hmm.
But that's what the first year was like. It was painful. It was beautiful. It was messy. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Mm. I'd have to say I agree. And that's why it's so hard when people ask, like you can be there to encourage and you can be there to support. But that first year, trying to explain to someone like the amount of self discovery that happens, the amount of exploration, the amount of surrender, the amount of, all of these times that you're kind of called to like let go. It's just, and everyone's in a different way. It all
Everyone.
depends on what the belief is or what the pattern is that you're letting go of. Um, I got two things that but I'm going to start with this first one. You talked about the people, and yes, not everybody's to be trusted, but how much did community, how much did, whether it was seeing or experiencing, and I'm not even talking about just the meetings, but the community and the people, how much did that matter in this journey?
It was everything to me. Like, I was lucky enough to have really good community. I had access to amazing meetings where people were really like literature based and they were like, read it for yourself. Don't be trusting these crazy people to interpret these messages for you. Read it your damn self and come to your own conclusions. And it's like, we'll give you suggestions, but you're a scientist. You need to experiment on your own. Like,
Mm.
don't believe what we say. Run a little experiment and find out for yourself. Trust your own judgment. And I didn't trust my own judgment in the beginning. It was hard for me to trust my own experiences because my head was not often kind to me. And I didn't know if I could trust it, but I did find people that I could trust. I would test things like, listen, I found a sponsor I could tell anything to. And she was a vault. I found several women like that that were just a vault, non-judgmental, loving, compassionate, gentle vaults. And the thing is not everybody's like that. So you test people out with something small. You listen to see if they're talking shit about anybody else. Because the way somebody talks about others is how they're going to talk about you. And these are life lessons that I didn't get growing up. I learned them in these rooms. And, you know, people would say and do things that would bring up reactions in me. I'd feel triggered and stuff. And people would very like sarcastically, "Oh, talk to your sponsor or write about it," or, but that was actually the real solution. That was the solution. They said it in a mean way that was kind of offensive, but yeah, in all humility, I did need to go, and they were actually doing me a favor. Somebody was like, "Oh, the people that you're mad at your most are your biggest teachers." And I was so offended by that. Like, I want my teachers to be admirable and have integrity. No, that my biggest teachers were the people that pushed my buttons the worst. But what was happening is that it brought up the feelings that I had dissociated from. And that's actually very difficult to do without pain. Like, if you're in bliss and la la land, it's very difficult to reach your deepest, darkest pain. Like, we actually need those people that trigger us to bring it up so that we can work with it and process it to resolution. I had a friend who would always say, "Don't waste a good crisis. Don't waste it. Lean in and find out what exactly is getting." I call it like a soul bruise. I had these wounds that were like a soul bruise, and every time somebody brushed up against it, condescension, or do you know what I mean? Like those experiences where you get really offended by somebody. It's like, oh, well, what's really going on here? I learned to lean into that kind of a thing and process with someone else and be like this. Like, every time I would have a reaction that was disproportionate to the situation, I learned that it wasn't about the situation. It was about something that was unresolved from the past. I did not know that. Like, that was new information for me. And so I began to really appreciate these people that were triggering me because it allowed me to process to resolution. And so
Yeah.
I changed. That was one of those weird things. I thought I never would change my mind about that, but I did.
Yeah, no. When I was in my 20s, I don't remember if it was the Four Agreements book where he tells the story, Don Miguel Ruiz, or if it was The Mastery of Love. But I read both of those books when I was in my 20s, and they made a dramatic impact on me. But he describes the soul wounds that you're talking about, that
Mm,
as we go throughout our lives, we start to, have hurts and pains and things afflicted upon us, and we carry these. And so we can never take offense really to what somebody else's response is, because you may have just touched their wound, or vice
right.
versa, they may have touched yours. um, yeah, and it makes me think about one of the things in my first year of recovery that I really started to focus on, was stepping into like fear, right? And when I started to feel fear or experience fear, to look further at what that really was, to see, why was that. So there's all of these things, and I love that you bring that up, because yes, I do think our discomfort, um, has so much wisdom in it, right? So
Yeah.
much wisdom in it. You mentioned in that first year, again, kind of like exploring, um, spirituality, like really stepping into that. So you went to meetings and you were able to receive there, and sometimes by the wisdom of the trigger. But what was the like spiritual path like in that first year? Like, I love the whole paper. I think you've shared the paper thing with me before, like
Did
taking what was,
I?
yeah, I
I
do,
love
which
that story.
it's a beautiful story. But what did that first year look like as far as you coming to understand that your spiritual path was going to play a role in this recovery?
It was actually pretty early on. I think what, even though me and God broke up and I totally rejected the religion of my childhood, the spiritual experiences is what remained. And when I was in early recovery, I had some pretty profound spiritual experiences. The first one that comes to mind, I don't know if I've even shared this before, but the first one that comes to mind was when I was losing that boyfriend I was telling you about due to my drinking. So I had been using his car. And when we broke up, he let me use it for a little while until I got on my feet. And so about a month later, he's like, can I get my car back? It's like, it was like a second car or whatever. But I think his mom was like, get your car back. Anyway, one day I was like, I needed a car to have work. I had no money. Didn't have a good job. I was like, look, God, whoever you are, like the spiritual experience. I know that there's something, I just don't understand it. But if you're out there, I am fully surrendered. I don't know how this is gonna work out, but I just surrender. And out of the blue, this is where I know this is sort of like my clue now for a spiritual experience is when this higher power is working in my life. Out of the blue, my dad comes over to my mom's house and he has checks for me and my sister. My grandmother had decided to start giving some money to her four kids. So my dad received a check. He's like, hey, I'm going to split it between you and your sister. And he gave the money to me and my sister. And it was
Wow.
$5,000.
Wow.
Not only was that enough money for me, I bought a little red RX-7. Do you remember those cars? They were so cute. It was like a little Corvette Seed. It was like a little like a little mini version. Anyway, it was a really cute car, and I had enough money for 6 months of insurance.
Wow.
So I did the responsible thing, like, and it literally came out of the blue. And to me, that was like one of many like spiritual experiences that I had. And it was often coming at a time of complete surrender of like, I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but please. I had somebody in my life. It was probably Kimmer's. In the book, I write about my experience with her and the paper, tearing the paper story, the exercise, like that whole thing came from Kimmer's. And she said, that there are just some problems that are God-sized problems, and to just let it go. There are some things that you can't, your addiction might be one of them. She was like, your cravings, your trauma, some of these are God-sized jobs. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. But I would just be in this mental space of my way is not working.
Mm.
And I would say this prayer like, God, if this isn't your will for me, whatever it was, whether it was the boyfriend or a job or whatever, it's like, you have to take this from me. Like this, I can't
Mm.
do this. This is your job. But and whatever the outcome may be. And so that it was like this willingness to set aside what I thought I knew so that I could receive new ideas and have a different experience.
I love that. And it just makes me think about, and I've had conversations with, witches and mystics and spiritual folks where, there's a desire, there's this want to manifest, to change, to transform, to bring something into their lives, but they often don't want to consider or think about what they have to let go to make room for it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so it's interesting because I think that so many of us in recovery end up in a place of like that is the only option. Like we yeah, like
We have
we're like
binary
take it
thinking.
we're like take it all because nothing's working, right? Like take it
Yeah.
all away because I drastically want something different. Um you know, this is a conversation that I've had with some folks recently, and I'm curious, like, did you know at that point in this first year, like, what you wanted, right? Because you knew what wasn't working. You know, the alcohol, the boyfriend
Mm.
had issue, you knew, but did you know what you wanted in that first year?
I mean, I thought I knew what I wanted, but that's like that same sponsor told me that God either says yes, not yet, or I have something better. And the idea that there was something better than what I thought I wanted, that was hard for me to wrap my brain around. It was like, what do you mean? Like, because I'm coming from this place of I'm not good enough. So
Yeah.
my dreams were very small and limited. Like what I was willing to accept was so small. It was so small. I want to go back to that girl and be like, oh, sweetheart, you were
I
destined
want a
for
bus
so much
pass.
more. I know, not a car.
just,
I want
just
a
give me a
bus.
bus pass.
Yeah, I was so willing to settle for less, but
Mm.
my God wants me to have big, beautiful, amazing things.
That's, I've said this plenty of times. Like the universe has no intention to like they're not like I really want you to have a shitty life, right? I want you to suffer. I want you to be in pain. Like they're not like, what here it sounds like a good idea to like take everything and just give them nothing, right? No, I'm like the universe, God, creator, the divine truly wants us to have a beautiful life, a
Yeah,
life of ease and joy and happiness. I mean, that's what they're like. I'm trying to give this to you, um,
yeah.
but yeah, the human experience. We often choose the difficult way, the way of pain, the way of struggle, because we're often told that's what we need.
Okay, but here's the catch, right? So hard choices make an easy life, and easy choices make a hard life, right? And while I'm not, there is a place for ease, but there is a place of hard. And if we're so used to living hard, why not submit to the growing pains as opposed to the consequence pain,
Hmm.
right? I have this idea that everything in life comes with a price tag, and you either pay the price up front in exertion, like hard choices, like effort, energy, like exercise is that for me. It's like I never want to do it. It's painful. I fucking hate it. But when I do it for a long enough period of time, I feel amazing. Like after every exercise, like I never regret it. I'm always like, oh, that feels great. Um, but it's like, okay, if I'm so used to suffering, why not suffer up front and get the goodies at the other side as opposed to taking the easy, free dopamine and paying for it later?
Yeah,
So,
I 100% agree. And where I will say where things get fuzzy is there are people that I think get addicted to the suffering. So the
oh, for
easy
sure.
so the easy
100%.
choice is to continue to suffer for them,
I agree.
right?
Yep.
And their hard
Yep.
choice still feels like the suffering,
Yeah.
right? And
Oh, I
so,
listen. The one I've seen this in 12-step rooms for decades now, where people get lost there.
hmm
They get lost there. Like they don't continue. It's like we got to keep it moving. Like there is a place to acknowledge your pain, self-reflection, trauma therapy, like dig into it. Dig
yeah,
into it. But the point of digging into it is to resolve it to resolution and find the courage to make different choices. We
yep,
don't live there.
yeah.
We don't live in the problem, right? We live in the solution. And I have seen people get lost in the pain.
It's it's transferring the addiction of the substance into the addiction of the chaos, right?
It's a it's better than what we used to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like harm reduction, right? Like if
Yep.
you used to do heroin and you're just smoking weed now, that's amazing.
Yep.
Do
Yep.
that.
And
Do
yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Right. I would no longer am driving drunk, but I'm also still living, a
In the
life where
past.
yeah. Um,
It's easy to
the
do.
it is. And that's where I think again, I asked the question of like, did you know what you wanted? And I love that you said what you did about the yes, not yet, or I've got something better. There's this song, and we're moving into this month of affirmation. So we're doing an affirmation challenge in July. And mine is this particular song, and the lyrics of the song is, "Hey, universe, I've got a request. I want you to show me how good my life can get." Right?
I love
As
that.
it, yeah, as in like we are little tiny humans, and I might be able to dream something, but guess what? There's a bigger dream out there that I think you could show me.
I have
Um,
this, I'd love to offer this free worksheet that I've been teaching the self-esteem class for many years now. And it's this worksheet. And part of the worksheet, it's acknowledging your things that you're grateful for, it's setting an intention. What are you grateful for? But my favorite part of the exercise is play wildly in your imagination. Play
mm,
wildly. And the idea is to pretend like it's already happened. Like that's like I'm a powerful manifester. I really believe in the power of manifestation practices. And this idea of what's the craziest thing I can think of and feel it as if it's already happened. And that's,
yeah.
a little section. And it's so interesting because what you think about, you bring about, it's identity shifting. Like, who would I have to be to allow? And then, I even had to do some mental gymnastics around there are people out there who do not have half the good intentions I do, who are living the life I want to live. So why not me? Why not
Yep.
me?
Yeah, we did back, I think it was April and May, we did the Alchemy of Desire. Because again, I think so many people, you start off with, I just want to be sober. I just want to, like, this is what you know. I don't
That's the
want to be,
starting point. That's a great
yeah.
starting point.
And so that's amazing. But then you're just like, nobody, you're like, I want to heal. But there's, to your point, like that grandiose kind of dreaming. Like, what is it really supposed to look like if I continue down this path? Because if I'm going to bring it about, if I'm going to be a magical person, a manifester, somebody that's able to do and conduct magic, I want to have a target that I'm aiming for, even if the universe is going to give me something better.
Yeah, sort of
Um,
like a North Star to sort of
mhm.
shoot towards. Yeah.
What is like, what does today look like in recovery? You've got, I think you said 32 years, right? What does today look like? What's your, kind of like your spiritual practices today, your recovery practices? What does it look like today?
Yeah, so today I have like this toolbox. I have like so many different practices, and like I actually take my own medicine, right? So like I shared about that journaling exercise. If your listeners want, they can download it at selfesteemcourse.com. There's a self-hypnosis recording about I am worthy to start reshaping your subconscious mind to allow you to receive. That's really important, right? Being the type of person that receives in the journaling exercise. I do it myself. I actually turned it into an app, and I'm filling it out every day. I'm creating a database. So, I'm going to publish it as an app because I think it'll be so powerful. I've manifested the crazy. I had tripled my income one year doing that. I've had like these amazing, like I've been doing the podcast for 10 years, and you know how it is doing a podcast. It's like you want it to grow. And I was like, you know what, there's got to be people out there who have platforms and audiences already who are just going to fall in love with me and want to share my message. How about that? That's me playing wildly in my imagination. And I kid you not, doing this exercise for a while, in one day I received two life altering messages. Dr. John Nichols from the She Recovers Foundation reached out to me. I had published an article on their site about recovering my people please myself. What was it? What was it now? It was like my validation junkie, about how to heal that. And she reached out to me one day and she showed me a screenshot of her desktop, and it was she said you made it into my book, and she screenshotted the article that I had written. She put it in her book. So that was
Mm.
I was like, after that I was like flying high. I was like, wow, I can't believe that manifested. And then I took the dog for a walk and I checked my email as I do, and an email came in from somebody, this guy Tommy Rosen. He was on my dream guest list, and his team actually reached out to me to pitch him as a guest. I was like, what is happening? So like these two things happened in a single day. These are people with
Wow.
large platforms that were, supporting my work. So I forgot what your question was, but like,
Well,
yeah, the
how does your spirituality, what is your recovery like kind of,
Oh, what does it look like today? Yeah, so
Yeah, what does it look like
I
today?
still do journaling. I don't meditate regularly. Usually my consistency in meditation happens when there's something challenging going on in my life, or I feel like I need more tools. I sort of have this idea of a recovery smorgasbord. So I try to pick three things. I have a deep
Mm.
set of tools, a deep toolbox, shall we say, and I could spend all day. Last year I did self care summer, and I turned my self care practice into another thing that I turned that into workaholism too. So if you like those tendencies, you can turn your self care practice into workaholism. And what I realized is I just need to pare it down to like three things, spend a half an hour, and then keep it moving. Like get on with my day, enjoy my life, try to stay present to what
Mm.
feels good and release what doesn't, and try
Mm.
to follow the internal compass that God gave me. Like, I want to create from a place of joy, not out of fear. Fear is a dirty fuel source that's so cheap,
Yeah.
right? And that's what the social media trades in. So I need to protect. I eliminated a lot of that stuff. I don't watch the news. I try to eliminate social media as much as possible. Very intentional about what it is that I consume, because your brain is like a biofeedback computer. Like whatever you put into it, that's what comes out. So I really do try to protect my brain and be very intentional about fostering love in one form or another.
I love that. Um, and I love the toolbox. I love pulling. I love the 30-minute concept. I again, there's so much wisdom in what you've shared in your journey, and I continuing to do the podcast and all the other work. I think that's amazing, Arlina. You've mentioned a couple of things that people can come find, and I do have your website there. But tell people, like, where can they find you? Why should they reach out to you? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, so Sober Life School is kind of like my hub. Like if you go there, you can find the self-esteem class. It's called the Reinvent Yourself class. That's about identity shifting, really, manifesting, all that stuff, clearing up the past, emotion management type stuff. I do coach one-on-one privately for people. I don't typically work with people who are physically addicted. Like you got to go to like if you're really red light, you got to probably go to detox and stuff like that. But I'm sort of quarterbacking and helping people to manage the resources early in recovery. It's good to have one person that's sort of like keeping track of all the things. I kind of think of it as like they're like the kite, like they need to ride the emotions, the wave of their emotions, but I'm like the grounding cord. Like I'm good at holding constraints and being like, okay, come on, maybe we need to go deeper, maybe we need to back off and keep it moving. It's like there's some resources missing. But I do have I do hypnotherapy. I do internal family systems. So I've been doing that for a very long time too. I've been working with people over 30 years. It took me a couple of years to really find my feet when I first got sober before I started helping people. But yeah, I have a depth of experience in behavior change, emotion management type stuff. But yeah, the free resources I have that actually has a link to the podcast. I have some free guides people can download. Like people don't know how to have fun when they first get sober, right? And so I have a PDF that's like a ton of fun things that you can try, like all kinds of things. There's like what to do for like your first 30 days, like your 30 tips for 30 days kind of a thing. Yeah, so there's some free resources on the podcast page as well.
I love that. Yeah, I know. I remember checking a bunch of them out when we chatted the first time, and they were really, really incredible. So I appreciate your work a lot, Arlina. I think
Thanks.
I think what you're doing is incredible. I think the world needs people that care in this way and understand, how to help and how to help people without judgment, and just really, really appreciate that. So I want to thank you for being here today.
It's
And
such a pleasure.
any final last things? Anything else that you want to leave the listeners with?
I think the idea of self-compassion is super underrated. I just want people to know that if you feel really bad about like where you've been, just know that it's not entirely your fault, right? Like we accumulate this pain and nobody tells you how to get out of it, right? And so everyone's walking around with a lot of pain, and I just want people to know that there is a way out and you can create a beautiful life for yourself. It doesn't have to be painful.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the listeners. As always, her website is up there. Go take a look. And don't hesitate to reach out if she has resonated with you today. Trust that spirit is trying to lead you where you need to go. So until next time, much love from, I hope I can say this, both Arlina and I. And until we meet again, take care, folks.